The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So welcome to everybody. Welcome, of course, to the people who will be presenting from Antananarivo in Madagascar and Ede in the Netherlands. And welcome to all the attendees from different parts in the world to listen in to the topic of this webinar. The webinar will be recorded, and you will get the link. So you will have the opportunity to look back at the webinar and the PowerPoint presentations. Sorry, my name is Marielle Dubbeling. I'm the director of RUAF, and together with my esteemed colleagues from ICLEI, we are running the CITYFOOD network and organizing this series of webinars. This is our second webinar. The first one took place in November last year on city region food systems, and we're looking forward to further webinars in future. The topic of this webinar is food policy councils, or maybe better said, food governance systems. There's many cities, looking at how to govern their urban food system and putting in place different mechanisms for that urban governance. Mechanisms can be formal mechanisms, can be informal mechanisms, can be led by citizens or civil society, can be led by the municipality, can involve different stakeholders in various ways. And cities are coming up also with different names or concepts for their governance mechanisms. Maybe the most well-known is a food policy council, with, for example, the city of Toronto having run a food policy council for the past 20 years. But we also talk about multi-stakeholder fora, we talk about food boards, we talk about reflection groups. And the most interesting thing is not so much the denomination of the mechanism or the form of it, but rather the process that different cities are engaged in, and the moments in their process during which they decide to build their governance mechanism, which can in some cities be from the start. Other cities decide first to develop an urban food policy or program and to build a governance mechanism around it later. Some cities or stakeholders focus on their own city, while others rather work in the city region, so together with other actors in the region, other cities, other provinces. And I'm really pleased that we have two cities presenting today. The first one will be Antananarivo, the capital of Madagascar, who will present to us the process they are in and share their advances to date and some of the questions they may have. And then we'll shift to the smaller city of Ede in the Netherlands, which is in the Netherlands one of the front-runner cities in the field of urban food policy. I suggest that if you have questions for either one of them, you'll just write them down. We'll listen first to both presentations, and then after the presentation from Ede, we will open the floor to everybody. And then you can either type in a question, you can ask to speak and unmute your microphone, and then we'll first answer some of the questions you have for one or both of the cities. And then I would like to suggest some general reflection points and points for discussion, where we would also love to have inputs from other attendees and other cities on where you are in your own process. And we'll close the webinar at a little past 3, so in about an hour. Without further ado, I would like to pass the word to Mr. Oliver and Mrs. Carmen from Antananarivo.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to start with a very short interview of our city because we are aware of the time constraints. We know that we have only 10 minutes. So Antananarivo is the capital city of Antananarivo. It's a city of 3 million inhabitants, 2 million residents, and 1 million floating population. We call it floating population because they just work in town during the day and leave the town at night. For the moment, we started working on urban agriculture in 2011, but I joined the staff at the municipality only in 2015 when the new mayor was elected. So food policy council or food governance system, it's all new to us, but we have embarked on it because we know that it is very important because ensuring access to quality food will be a real problem if we do not start taking appropriate measures now. So we take advantage of a structure that we have at the commune because we have different departments. Some of them are directly involved with the issues that we deal with. Some of them are indirectly. So that's why we think that it is important for us. So now we are working on two fronts. What I mean by working on two fronts, we are, first of all, we are trying to strengthen our structure within the commune. For example, we already have a unit working on urban agriculture, but because it's not a department, it's still a unit under the urban development. We think that later on we'll have more latitude in taking decisions if we create a new department, but it is not that easy. So for the moment, we have chosen an alternative, but we think that it is better if the unit working on urban agriculture report directly to another department called Department of Social Affairs, because this Department of Social Affairs is directly responsible for the school gardens. That is one of our priorities, and this is one point, strengthening the structure within the commune. But at the same time, we are already busy identifying the different partners or stakeholders that will be working with us. And we are lucky because 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we already signed a memorandum of understanding and to establish a partnership with what we call the humanitarian platform of the private sector. That means that we are working with all the big companies within the capital, and we think it is a big move forward, because later on, if we identify a specific project, we are already sure, but we have their backup. We also work with different neighboring communes, because Antananarivo is working with 37 rural communes, and for the moment we have identified 4 of them, and we are going to work with 4 mayors. This is to strengthen the linkage between urban and rural communities, and this is also a big step forward for us. I think that this is what all I have to say in terms of governance, and Carmen will complete everything related to the technical aspect. Of course, if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer them, especially questions regarding policy and strategies at the level of a municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Thank you, Marielle from RUAF and ICLEI for inviting us to present this project. So I will try to make the best of me to summarize our activities. So let me just introduce you a little bit to where Antananarivo is. For those who don't know where we are. We are based on the Indian Ocean in the southeastern part of Africa. Antananarivo is the capital city of Madagascar and the highest city in the country. That means that, as the map is showing, Antananarivo is based in the highest point of the island. This is a very comfortable climate in order to work in a capital city, because you have a rainy season which is not very strong, so we can profit from the situation in order to work with agriculture in a very comfortable way. Antananarivo is the capital city, which is around 88 square kilometers. As Mr. Oliver introduced, we have a population of around 2 million people. But in the outskirts of Antananarivo, that means the 10 kilometers around Antananarivo, we are arriving to 5 million population. The topography of Antananarivo is quite favorable because we have the capital city in the center. In the mostly in the hills is where the city is being developed, but then we have a very large area for a sort of greenbelt in order to develop agriculture, especially devoted to rice crops. With the time, these rice crops have been changing their use, and now we can say that we have a mixture between rice crops and other crops, especially related to vegetables, production of vegetables and fruits. That means that all this greenbelt area provides all what Antananarivo needs in order to be satisfied in terms of food. So that's when the environment becomes really favorable for this sort of city region food system. It's very important to say that Antananarivo, Madagascar especially, is one of the countries mostly exposed to climate change problems. We have been facing in the last years lots of cyclones and heavy rainfall seasons, which provide a situation which is quite challenging, an environment which is very challenging in terms of floods. So we have had, especially last year, a very difficult situation, especially in the months between January and March, in order to fight with this situation, because this means that floods provoke a lot of rise in prices for food procuration, and that means that population which is faces these difficulties to have access to food. So that's one of the most important reasons why the community has decided to think about solutions in order to provide food accessibility in the best way. So this is the context. You can see the mixture between the urban sprawl and the rice crops around Antananarivo. You can see in this picture a very interesting image, because we see that the identity of the city is really a city of agriculture in the basis. And so this means that in the collective conscience of its inhabitants, people are used to living with agriculture. And this is something which is quite visionary, because now cities are trying to go back to urbanization and food production. And Antananarivo has already this identity. So this helps a lot to work with the citizens in this sense. So our project with the community has started based on the SDGs number 2 and 11, and since 2016 we have signed the Milan Urban Food Pact, which has helped us to take priorities in terms of what axis we were going to approach to develop a food policy. So, to go very fast, the chronology of initiatives, as Mr. Oliver said, we had from 2011 to 2016 a pilot program, especially concentrated on the diffusion of microgardens. So that means production of food in the city, especially in poor neighborhoods. This means working a lot and very strongly with the civil society engaged in this project, which helped us to, with the diffusion of the project, especially in schools and in social centers, that allowed us to get to almost 18,000 people who now are sensibilized to the urban agriculture issues, producing food and fruits and vegetables for consumption and for sale. That means that people who have joined the program are able to produce food also to, not only for their consumption, but also to as an activity in order to come out of poverty. In 2017, Antananarivo signed the Milan Pact, Urban Milan Pact, and then in 2018, we started with an action plan for the application of the Milan Pact to reinforce especially the local food governance. That means not only working with the community of Antananarivo, but also with all the communities which are located in the outskirts of the city. This is quite a challenge because it's a concept which was very new, but we received a lot of support from others, other communities, especially rural communities, who are interested to join this initiative because they see the potential of reorganizing the Greenbelt in order to provide more access to food and to reduce all the intermediate actors who which sometimes block this possibility of commercialization. So this is quite complex activity we are going through, but which is giving lots of results. We have the chance, at the same time, there were some European projects going on about the support to local producers which are located in the outskirts of the city. So we joined this European project in order to facilitate the commercialization of products. So here the community had a very important role because they opened the doors to actors which were already working in the field and propose a strategy which is going to help things get in order. So that's when the idea of creating this Food Policy Council became important, because we didn't have to start from zero, but we had to put all actors together in the same table in order to discuss and take decisions on how we are going to address this issue altogether. So the creation of the Food Policy Council, let's say that it's going on, it's a process, it's a work in progress now, but we are really going further quite fast. I think between 2018 and 2019 would be the strongest or the most important moment in order to work with these governance issues. This is a summary of the vision we are working on. Our objective is to help all people of Antananarivo get access to a healthy nutrition. Then we have lots of, well, it's quite long in order to provide details about all the vision, but all our efforts are going to be concentrated in the development of an integrated local food policy. That means taking into account a multi-sectoral approach. That's what we mean by integrated local food policy. So get all actors from different sectors together and work in the same sense. we also need to work very thoroughly with the Ministry of Agriculture, and try to focus on what the objectives of the central government are going to be, and how we will adapt as a community to these objectives. For us, it's very important to approach the problem as a territorial problem, in order to give this, to provide a proper environment for these linkages between the outskirts and the rural communities which are around Antananarivo and the urban communities. So this spatial continuity for us is very important to take it always into consideration. Of course, integration of civil society in the territorial connection. So already we are already working with the civil society, but encourage more and more the involvement of this civil society. Fostering linkages with the private sector is, of course, very, very important. As Mr. Oliver said, we have already signed lots of different partnerships with other actors from the private sector, which are very interested in this project and trying to provide their know-how and help us facilitate this, facilitate this project with the know-how of a private sector, which is not what we are used to doing every day. And last but not least, create a sort of tool for sharing information. That means that there's a lot of information which has been collected in these years, and that maybe has not been capitalized in any sense. So the community fund of Tana proposed this idea of creating not only the Food Policy Council, but a sort of open data portal where we will collect all this information and try to use it in an intelligent way.
Hi, Carmen. Just a reminder about the time. We need to, yeah. Thank you.
Try to go very fast. It's very difficult. Yeah, we're already 15 minutes. Okay. Let me just go back. Then, well, okay. This is our action plan. So we are now in the first phase, which is the territorial local food system diagnosis. We are trying to, as I said, develop a sort of vision, global vision, the creation of the open database, concentrating on the 6 axes of the Milan Pact, preparation of workshops with the main stakeholders to identify priorities and the roadmap outline, and then elaborate a sort of document which will allow us to all follow these same initiatives. So here is quite a simple image about the different actors. So we have the community of Antananarivo in the center, and then all the actors which are collaborating with us at this moment. What we do, so quite fast, is develop an urban agriculture in all the cities. So here you can see a map of all the city and all the green points where we already have beneficiaries and centers where we form people to urban agriculture. This is the territorial approach. So these green areas are already areas which provide food to the city, but then our idea is to go to all these outskirts. So you can see the light green here. This is all productive area, so the green belt. So the idea is to collaborate with these actors. And of course, take into account the vision of climate change adaptation, because of the importance for us to consider this initiative as a resilience strategy for the city. I had some examples, but I think there's no time. So maybe during the questions, we will give some examples about what we already do. but I had chosen 4 examples in order to give you more details about our strategy. But of course, we don't have time, so I will just pass the word to ICLEI and then to Ede. When we develop the questions, we will have time to go over the projects and examples.
Thank you very much, Carmen and Mr. Oliver. And I'm sure we'll get back to the more extensive presentation for all the interesting components of your program. Just want to highlight a couple of things focusing on governance, no? So you are working in a parallel process of establishing or reworking your food policy and strategy alongside building a governance mechanism. You called that governance mechanism the Food Policy Council, which will be led by the Commune de Antananarivo, but involve other actors. And something else which stood out is that you will work at city region level with rural communes and also the Ministry of Agriculture. So with that, I would like to give the word to Vrouwtje Idema, who will present to us the experience of Ede in the Netherlands.
Okay, thank you, Marielle. I'll start by saying that I really enjoyed the story from Carmen and Mr. Olivier, so thank you. As Ede, we'll start with a very short film to show you what kind of city region you are. Then I'll put a quick light on our food policy, and of course we focus then on our Food Policy Council, and we'll try to do it in 10 minutes. So we'll start with the movie right now so you get an idea what Ede is all about as city region.
I'm catching something in my heart. We're making angels in the sand. Right on a riverboat on fire. We're making pictures in the light. People will wonder why we're stealing from those days. We're making stories on Monday morning. Dancing in the summertime, singing songs to love. Let's go about singing songs of peace, so I'm taking it all. Give me your hand right now. I wanna take you to the place I found. Give me your love right now. Give me your hand right now. I wanna take you to the place I found. Give me your love right now. I wanna take it in a time. I wanna live inside. Dancing in the summertime, singing songs to love. Singing songs, peace, so I take it in a
So, this is Ede, and thank you for watching this already. I will tell you something about our city region. And, well, you can see some pictures over here. We have a lot of knowledge and innovation in our region. And just to give you an idea, this is our city region. It's one city in the middle with a lot of small villages all around, a lot of rural area. So let's, yes, go to the next. And then, as city region, of course, we also face all kinds of challenges and urgency concerning food. And so 4 years ago, something like that, our city council made a very conscious choice wanted to have a food policy. It was a political choice, a very conscious choice, and that brought us to the point that at this moment we have been a food policy now for about 4 years. It all started with a vision on food. That was what you see right now. We want to have healthy and sustainable food for everyone in our municipality. So an urban food policy. You can see now, it's a kind of overview that, well, this is, to be honest, this is the heart of our food policy, and I'll translate it for you. It's about the choices we made, is that we focus on a robust agri-food system, short food chains, sustainable consumption, and healthy food environments. You see the icons, healthy people, of course, and food as a system approach, because it's all integrated. We chose an integrated food policy. That means that, well, to reach that, we described 2 main goals to get it all being done. And as you can see, we chose for, well, everyone in Ede should be able to make their own choice for healthy food, should we have access to knowledge, access to healthy food, for example, in primary schools. And the other goal is that, of course, we want to have all our agri-food businesses, we want to have them operate in an innovative and sustainable way. So we want to stimulate it as municipality, as government, as local government. And just to tell you, of course, we have been doing it now for 4 years. A nice result in the meantime is, for example, that 1/3 of our primary schools have school gardens. That's a really nice result. But, well, I won't get into detail in it, because we will focus on our Food Policy Council. So let's keep on going. Just to say something about our government's approach. As I said, we have an integrated food strategy. That means that, well, we involve all departments and sectors within our municipality. So we work very hard on involving our colleagues. Another thing is that we work together. That's a vertical thing in this picture. We work together in the Netherlands with provinces, with other regions on national level. We have to do that because we are such a busy country as it is about administrative layers. We have to do that, but it's very important to get results. And last but not least, we collaborate with the civil society. We do that in very different ways and many ways. For example, we work very closely together with the food hospital in our city region, with all kinds of agri-food entrepreneurs. And as you can see, we started with a food policy council. Now we focus on the food policy council. Why do we want, as Middletown, as city region, a food policy council, while we have it already in our, let's say, we have political agreements, commitments? That's because at this very moment, we want to have also people inside itself committed. We need support for our food policy at this moment. And we need also, that's very important for us, we want to have our policy successful through testing and transparency. It's important to be very open what we want to do and what we will do in the next few years. And we need information, we need ideas from the people itself. Also, just to pick out one of them, as you can see, we want to stimulate connection and all kind of cooperation between all kind of partners and stakeholders within our society. Of course, it's agreed, our food policy, by the city council, but still those people are chosen. And well, there are so much more people who want to be represented. That's the reason we want to have a food council. What we have done in the meantime, we have had a try out just to find out what is the best process to be organized, to get it organized. So we had a lot of interviews with people, with key figures from our municipality, just to get their ideas about the food policy council. And the next step, what we did, is checking out all their well, let's say, initiatives and activities all around food councils. And Ghent is very close to the Netherlands, so of course we went to Ghent, but also Amsterdam. And Amsterdam is a very nice example because they used to have a very nice initiative, but then it disappeared. So we wanted to learn from other initiatives. That's what we have done. And well, you see the picture. Well, you see Nicole, she's on the right, she's on the table here as well, and she's the policy advisor from our Food Council. And as you can see, we're in a supermarket, a huge supermarket in our region, and we try to have discussion. One of our first discussions within the supermarket itself is the main stakeholders to be for our Food Policy Council. The results after the trial, well, you can read them, but to be very clear, there is support, there is social commitment for a food council in Ede itself. And also the idea is that, well, coming together and think about healthy and sustainable food for everyone in Ede, there should be very good ideas to be collected in such a group of people. However, what is very important is what the role should be from a food council. That is not very precise yet, and that is a process to be discovered by the food council itself. So that's a very important part of our process. But to be very simple, to be very clear, there is ownership, there's a feeling of ownership for a food council. Well, that was one of our meetings in the context of the tryout, and we go to the next slide. It's an ongoing process. So what next? And the next steps we think we have to do is to approach a lot of enthusiastic people, key figures from our municipality, and ask them to participate, but not voluntary, but to participate for a longer time. And we realized that it's a kind of grow model. It's like step by step and day by day. So it is important also to formulate a kind of process approach for it. What is also very important, what we realized, is that the support from us as municipality is very important. It just doesn't stop. We have to keep on going by facilitating, by showing up that we think it's really important that in our municipality there will come a food council. It won't come by itself. And so, as you can see, we have to stay alert all together that energy is being used in the right way. The participants itself, what did they say? Well, they said, for example, that they think they have a very important role to keep a dialogue going on about the meaning of healthy and sustainable food. What is healthy sustainable food? What is going well? What has to be developed? For example, I told you, I said something about primary schools. What will be the next step? What do people think? Also, what I think what is important, what the participants said, is they want to be involved. And well, what I also think what is very important is they share the idea that it's important for Ede as city region to be seen as a city which embraces the idea of a food council. So, as a pioneer on integrated food policy in the Netherlands, all participants in the trial think it's important to have a food council to keep that position. That is what has been recognized. And last but not least, they think they could have a role in, well, let's say, helping us as municipality in making good policy for next years. We have just had local elections, so we will have a new, well, let's say, local government for the next 4 years, and we need the ideas of, well, people in the municipality itself, and they think they have a role in it. What do participants say? What have they said about the task? What could they do? They think that they could be influential. They could make connections between all kind of food, between the foodies, let's say it like that, people, the early adapters, and people, well, who are not really involved in food yet, and the importance of healthy food. They think that they could play a role in connecting, making connections. Also in enlarging the network, making more people involved in food. And, well, they think that also they could play a role in, for example, making connections between schools, health institutes, supermarkets, sport clubs, all kind of societal partners. They could play a role in it. However, there are some points of attention. Well, what we found out is that, of course, there is a kind of well, stress, let's say it like that, between personal and organizational commitment. We want people to speak out free, so they should be able to think free and say what they think, what is important for us as food municipality. But of course, we need commitment for organizations, key organizations from our community. So we need them both. Another thing is that, of course, when you join a food council, well, it's not that you do it one time, next time you don't want to be there. It is something. It is really something you have to share, and you want to share it. Another thing is that Ede's municipality should be a very important and equal partner. That's what is said by the participants. It's not that, well, you have your food policy and well, we do our own thing. No, you, municipality, you should be an equal partner for us. Stay next to us. That's the message. Well, as said before, it's important to have lots of people aboard. So people which represent society, people in our society. And last, well, we have to learn from other processes, other initiatives, other food council experiences to come to make the next step. Then finally, and I think that's an important question, why have we done it as we have done it? Let's say it like that. We started this political agreement, we started this city council with food policy, and now we want a food council. Why have we done it like this? We found out that in this way, in this process, all participants feel that they're supported already because it is a topic in our municipality already, food. They could see it, it's a political topic. It has been discussed for many years now, and they could see the results at school, for example, when they bring the children to school. Also, what I feel, it's kind of support that there is already a kind of network between entrepreneurs, food entrepreneurs, and societal partners. And also this is visible, so that again feels as a kind of support. It's a good starting point. And some of our participants, potential participants for a food council, they already took part in our food policy, and they are, well, let's say, a bit experienced. They know what cooperation could do, what it could bring. So for us, it was a kind of logical next step. And to be honest, when we started about 4 years ago by our food policy and implementation of it, we have communicated, we have talked about it, so we managed the expectations of having a food policy. It's not something new. We talked about it from the beginning. Well, this is my last slide, so I think we can open the floor now, Marielle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vrouwtje, and of course also Nicole, for again a very inspiring presentation. Both cities, Ede and Antananarivo, really have had the courage also to show the process they are in and the development process and the many questions that they ask themselves and that each of us, we can ask ourselves, no? Like, what should be the role of a food policy council? Who should participate? Should people participate as an individual or an organization? What should be the role of the municipality? Is it rather a lead or a partner? When to build a food policy council? is it like in Ada, where you first have a more solid food policy and then after 4 years you expand into a council? Or like in Tana, where food policy development and a government mechanism go hand in hand? And of course, there is no right or wrong answer. And I think it would be very interesting to get some feedback and input from the different people around the table, also from the attendees. So please feel free to either ask a specific question to Ada or Antananarivo, or to share your impressions or your own experience in developing a food policy council. If you go to the attendee list, you see your name and you can raise your hand. You see a small hand on the top of the screen. You can raise your hand to indicate that you want to talk. And as soon as you raise your hand, then Thiago or Luc will unmute your microphone and you can speak. So any Sylvia, Jess, Helena, Femke, Alice, or of course one of the participants may have one of the presenters may have a question for another presentation. I see a question put in by Alice. I'll read it out loud. She says, what role does the dissemination of agricultural, horticultural knowledge play in your respective city regions? Are there capacity building programs? Who is the target group? Who's working as an urban gardener? So several questions in one. Alice, please add if you want to. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think I put it quite concisely in the question. So yeah, I'm curious to know your answers.
Thank you. I propose we take 2 more questions from the audience if they are, and then we'll give the floor to Tana and to Ede. Any other questions from the participants?
Yeah, excuse me that but we don't see the questions, and well, I'm really sorry, but we can't find the questions on the screen.
Okay, I have to depend on Thiago to see if I go to the attendee list, I have a small list where it says attendees or staff. I can click on attendees. I can see the name of Alice. I can see a question mark. And if I click on that, I go to the question pane and I get the question.
Excuse me, I don't see the attendee list neither. I cannot find it. Where is it exactly?
There is a, if you see on the right of the screen, there are many tabs, and you can see sharing, audio, dashboard, and then there's the attendee list. But I'm sharing my screen now. Can you see the question on the screen or not? No?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't see it.
No? So I can read the question again if that's helpful. So the question that Alice brings is, what role does the dissemination of agricultural or horticultural knowledge play in your respective city region? This is the first question. So does any...
Thiago, can you post the question maybe also in the chat box?
Sorry?
Can you post the question also in the chat box?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So I would like to add a second question, or maybe it's a fourth question, to both the cities. Is where are you planning to host the Food Policy Council? Will it be hosted in the city in a specific department, or by another non-government organization? So what are your thoughts about that? So I'd like to give the floor now first to Antananarivo and then to Ede to answer. And meanwhile, the other attendees can post their question also in the chat box.
Okay. Thank you. For the moment, thank you for your question. This is a very important question. Where are we going to host it? For the moment, we have not made a firm decision about that because, as I told you, we are working on two fronts. We are still busy identifying the partners and trying to enlist more partners because we would like to make sure that all the relevant stakeholders are involved, so that we can have better results, especially knowing that we have to think of sustainability. So we need to make sure that everyone is involved. But I would like to go back to the question related to capacity building and the role of the dissemination of urban agriculture, because it's related to the issue. The dissemination plays a very important role because the two keywords are sustainability and accessibility, and the two keywords are interwoven. We cannot we cannot facilitate accessibility if it is not sustainable. So, well, in terms of dissemination, we want to put the emphasis on capacity building, and of course, the capacity building at the level of a commune, but also at the level of our partners. So, capacity building at the level of a commune. Who are the target people for us? For us, it will be the technical staff in all the relevant departments, especially the department of IT, because as Carmen said before, we have a lot of data, but because they have not been compiled, they have not been put together, so we cannot translate them into action, or we cannot use them to guide our action. So capacity building at the level of our technical staff, especially the IT department, is very important. And of course, capacity building with the producers that we want to support to make the system sustainable. Because, and here we put the emphasis on the agroecology, because what we noticed during the field work that we do is that the producers lack basic information on the use of entrants, especially the use of pesticides. They just hear from neighbors, this product is good. So even in terms of how to use this chemical product that may be harmful to our health, we pay careful attention to that. So capacity building will also target the producers, of course. Okay, this is all I have to answer related to these two questions. Thank you.
Could I take the floor now, Marielle?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Please,
Okay. The system is still a bit new for us, so kind of try. Okay, thank you for the questions. Let's start with the last question. Well, that's an interesting question, good question, I think. Well, we asked, to be honest, we asked our potential participants in the Food Council already. And what they said is that we found out that they think it's an interesting idea to have it hosted by the municipality, but on a place where they want to have it. It could be the hospital, food hospital in our city region. It could be in the supermarket. To be honest, there was our first meeting from the Food Policy Council. And next time it could be on a farm, for example. So we won't, as municipality, we won't tell where City Policy Council should be. It's up to them, but we will host it as a municipality. That's our opinion about it. And I think it's a very good one because, well, then you have the ability to go everywhere, to meet each other, instead of well, being on a place where it's not really all about food, to be honest. It's a building where we are. It's not really a place where it's about food, but work of food policy. And food policy should be, you should meet each other outside, not in our building. That's our opinion. To go to the first question, well, that's a good question too. In the Netherlands, we see a kind of change. We see that in agriculture. We see that, especially in our area, a lot of farmers, well, have difficulties because there is not much perspective for them in primary agriculture, for example. So we try to help them to find out what is good to do, what kind of sustainable farming is possible, what kind of new business models are possible for them to still to stay a farmer, but not in a traditional way anymore, because we need all the way of producing food sustainable in a sustainable and innovative way. However, still there will be needed traditional farming, but not in a scale, not in a large amount that it is right now. So we try to facilitate the farmers in finding a new way to have their own business. That could be still traditional farming, but for a small group, that will be a possibility, and could be a kind of new way of farming. And then, of course, when we talk about food policy, we try to facilitate the process. How do we do that? We work together with the Wageningen University Research Center, and of course there are all kinds of societal partners like banks, like big entrepreneurs, and we try to connect them and make useful cooperation between them and help them in finding new business models and new food chain partners, for example. So we try to give them an alternative, and well, we think that's the best thing to do, because, well, we are such a different country than other countries, I think, here around the table, and that's what we see what is possible for us to do as municipality. We can't be responsible for their problems, but we try to help them, to facilitate them, to bring them into contact with all partners, to find new possibilities for farming in another way. And another way farming could help to reach healthy and sustainable foods. And that's what it is all about, well, when we talk about food policy in our case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vrouwtje. I would like to follow up with you first, and then Tana again, on two questions I got from Quito. One is, how do you deal, Ada or Tana, with what we can say political tensions between different levels of government? They also want to work with the province, but the province has another political orientation than the municipality. So have you come across that, and how did you work with that? And Quito is right now in the middle of a period of elections. I know the Netherlands had municipal elections 2 months ago. So how do you sustain a food policy council in periods of elections?
Hey, would you like me to start, Marielle, or what would you like?
Yes, please, Vrouwtje, you can start, and then we'll give the floor to Tana.
Okay, then. Well, that's a very interesting topic. Political tensions, yes, indeed. In the Netherlands, we have a lot of public administrative layers on local, regional, provincial, and national level. So we do have to work together. And one of our first steps, what we have done as cities, as city regions, is to make mass, to work together, to start a kind of alliance between cities, to be a stronger partner for national government. Just to show that on local level, we know what we're talking about. We know what is going on when we talk about our inhabitants. And we realized that we have to find each other to be a strong partner for national government, because on national level, well, it's still talking about a food agenda. It's not really implementing something or making a vision about food policy. And so they need our voice, they need our opinions based on practical results. And so we found each other, that's what we did. And of course, that brings also tent visits. What we try to do, for example, is, and I think a few weeks ago already, there was a kind of debate on national level. And what we do as cities on local level is that we will be there, we were there, and we talk with them, we talk with political parties, we give them ideas what is needed to come further, to make the next step. So we try to be partner also in the political area. And of course, well, then it's a kind of balancing between tents and between connecting, still keeping a good connection. On local level, it's a bit the same. We've just had elections, and well, I'm happy that almost all political parties on local level embraced the subject of food already. They have done it in the last few years, and they still do. So that was not really hard working for me, but on the other hand, in advance, in the last few years, I had to work on each time telling them how important it is to be involved with food, to be busy on food for the entrepreneurship in our region, for the children in our region. So I had to remind all political parties that it should be a subject which shouldn't be ignored. And of course, then meanwhile there was sometimes tension. For example, when other topics were at that moment more important than food. It's a kind of balancing in the same way, but then on a local level. Well, I think I gave you some information about it. I could tell you much more about it. I used to work for national government, but I think for this moment this will do.
Thank you very much, Vrouwtje. Mr. Oliver or Carmen, would you like to respond to Kito's questions?
Yes, it's a very important and a very challenging question, because I think that we have similar problems, because the interplay of politics and food and how they both affect each other is really a very important question, and we also would like to learn from the experience of other cities. For the moment, for example, what we do at the level of primary schools, where we have school gardens, we have a good working relationship with the Ministry of Education, because the Ministry of Education is responsible for the primary schools, but we are responsible for managing them. What we mean is they provide, the Ministry of Education in our country builds the schools and provides the teachers, but we are responsible for managing them at the level of municipality. That's why it's easy for us to work with them, with our school gardens and the school canteens. Maybe later on, when it comes to more important issues, when we are going to deal with regional, with a territorial aspect, we need to be very careful and talk about the technical issues, and insist on the fact that it is important for all levels of governments to work together, so that we can have a better result and we better address the different issues and the challenging. Because as Marielle, as Carmen said at the very beginning, we are sensitive to climate change, in the sense that every year our city, our country in general, but also our city, is always hit by cyclones and by tropical storms. If we are lucky, the disaster may be minimized, but you never know with climate change. So that's my answer to this question. maybe if we can have also the experiences of other cities on that question, that may help us.
Marielle, may I add one more thing?
Yes.
Sure. Go ahead.
Very short. Just a few more things, because it's such an inspiring subject. What we also have done is writing articles with other societal partners for newspapers. It's very important to be good and tell it. But of course, and in context of the Food Policy Council, also we ask our partners, also on local level, but also on national level, to ask to tell about us, about food policy, and the need of having a good policy. To tell them, to tell political leaders that it's important to have that. So we try to let other people tell about the meaning of it. And then last thing is that we found out is sometimes when it's not quite clear how much it costs, what will be the results, what will be the impact, then it will be kind of political tense. So what we found out is that we are all the time very clear in what the costs are, what the results meanwhile are, how we try to monitor, the impact. So that releases, let's say it like that, that makes more small the political tense, because that's always a reason for political tense. That's what we found out.
I just want to add something. Thank you, Ede, for this last comment, because I think that is very important. I mean, if we can show results, this is very important to produce documents and information that can guarantee that these results, because in any case, everybody is interested in results. I mean, in the political sense, I mean, I think the national government would be very pleased when there are some differences with the local governments. They are pleased to see that there are results, because in any case, they gain from that. So producing this information, I think it's crucial. And I think another thing to add is as well reinforce the role of the Food Policy Council, which is the linkages between the private sector, the civil society, and other actors which produce. Because if we have a strong council, very diverse with different actors, this strength replaces the strength of the local government, in the sense that if we manage to have a solid, real relationship between these actors, then it's less important if there are some political tensions. Of course, they will be always important, but they will be less challenging because of the strength the policy gains. So I think that it's really important to do not waste time, but use our time to reinforce the linkages between the different actors and the different sectors which are represented by the Food Policy Council. Because then, if there are political tensions, they will not provoke, I mean, this will not be that much an obstacle for the development of the projects related to food systems.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you very much. I would like to share some offline comments I got from different cities. So we're working with different technical systems. Quito would like to share that, as I said, they're in the middle of a process of election. So like what Fraukje said, they are talking to many potential new mayoral candidates to get food on the topic. But another strategy they are going to apply, which is apparently also quite used in Spanish cities, is to develop what they call a citizens' charter. So they are now drafting a charter which is to be signed by civil society, by private sector, by governments, but also by citizens, to call for the new government to continue working on food and to develop a food governance mechanism. I found some examples from the Netherlands as well. where, for example, in Almere, where this process was led by a group of students, and where this charter is also available online, so that you mobilize through social media, you mobilize support. And Bristol is another example where that was done. So we will, as part of the recordings, we will share some examples of these charters with you. I have offline comments from Ghent and Melbourne, totally agreeing on the importance of communication. Communication within the municipality to other stakeholders in various forms, communication on results from the start, and using different media, so social media, Twitter, television, articles, and in Melbourne, they have hired the University of Melbourne as a kind of a external actor to really support that and draft the communication strategy from the start and to implement that together with other actors. I'm also conscious of time, so I just want to give a final opportunity to some of the attendees who haven't spoken to share some of their experience. Maybe Jess, I know you've looked at food governance. Maybe Helena from Sao Paulo, please raise your hand or type in a question or an answer in the chat box, so we can also benefit from your experience. I see, yeah, Jazz, please talk, and then I'll give the floor to Helena. Jazz, you are unmuted. Not sure if you can talk. If not, please, Helena, can you? Okay, Jess said that her mic is not working. Helena, Helena is having problems with audio. The wonders of technology. So yeah, you still have the chat box function if you want to share a short comment or if you want to share a question. In any case, I would like to thank Ada and Antananarivo for sharing their experiences. I would like to thank all of the attendees for their participation. The objectives of the webinars now for CITYFOOD are indeed to learn from other people, to learn from their real life experiences and questions they have. So we took note of those questions. And as I said, we will try to find additional resources or comments from a broader group of cities to be shared with you. And we will also be using our CITYFOOD newsletter to share experience. And I would already like to announce that we will be organizing early next year a special issue of the Urban Agriculture magazine to deal with the topic of food policy councils, where we hope to share experiences from other cities and where we hope definitely to be able to feature an article from Ede and from Antananarivo. So my colleague Femke will reach out to you. There's no hurry, there's time. And if any of the participants have additional resources they want to share or additional experiences, we will collect those and share them with you as part of the recordings and the notes of this webinar. So I would propose from my side, again, to thank you very much and close this, and I will hand over to ICLEI for some final words. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Marielle. And thank you all the panelists who shared their knowledge with us during the webinar. I just want to make a short announcement. We circulated with our last newsletter a survey. If you still can see my screen, you can see the survey that we sent to our CITYFOOD network members and also the attendees of this webinar. If you'd like to answer the survey, it's very short. This is to help us formulate materials that we are preparing to advance the understanding of and to advocate for more sustainable food systems. So all you have to do in the first question is to select the terms that are more relevant to your context, and this will help us to have a sense of what you are working with and which are the topics that are more interesting for you. And in the second session, you can have the chance to share with us. You can click here, add file. If you have a food strategy, a food action plan, or a food policy in place, you can share with us through this form. And this will help also to inform our work for the next year, as we can have this as a resource whenever we are developing our work at the CITYFOOD network. And also just a reminder about the event that it's coming up. It's the ICLEI World Congress that will happen between 19th and 22nd of June in Montreal in Canada. So you are all invited, and we are organizing a couple of sessions focusing on food systems during the Congress. And of course, we will share the outcomes of this with you through our newsletters as well. So yeah, thank you very much for everyone for joining us. As Marielle announced before, this webinar was recorded and will be available, so you can always get back to it whenever you would like to see how was the presentations and the discussions. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.